Hello and welcome to the Side One YouTube channel. My name is Ray, and in this video, R2D2 build part 12, we're going to install a couple of servos. So in previous videos, I assembled R2D2 up with 4 rings. The last video was actually building the legs, but before I can attach the legs, the shoulder hubs have to be installed, which I did do in a previous video. I've pulled them out and pulled the top ring off, ring 4, so that I can gain access to where the servos mount. Once the side hubs are in for the installing the legs, you can't access those servos anymore, which is something of an annoyance. So once these go in, they block access to the screws in the top of the servo, and that's the same for both sides. So once they're in, there's no access to get to the screws for the servos. So I've pulled them out, and I've also pulled off the top section to make it easier to access. Now these servos are used to operate doors, what they call the bread pan cover doors, and also the data port, I think it is, door on at the front here, and the bread pan doors here. You'll note down here when you're building it, there's actually a hole through for the hinge mechanism to go. And what we have is this. I've printed this in TPU. He suggested a semi-rigid TPU, and these just push onto the servo horns. Okay, so I've already screwed this one down, and this one will go in here like so, and this one a little more difficult to get in. You've got to slide it into here and try and get it. Oops. There we go. Try and get it into there, and it's only held with 2 screws at the back here. So this one will have 4, this has 2. Always pays to hang on to the screws when you use servos. Even if you don't use them, hold on to them. They could be handy on another job. So I'm just going to screw this one down, and that could probably use a bigger screw. That's always handy. Not. And that one works better. So I've been collecting screws for a while. Now I did think about putting the servos, they come with like a vibration shock mount. I did think about putting those on there, but it was more trouble than it was worth, particularly for this front one for the data port. Now I've actually installed a few of the greebles on this as I've been going. I've been doing a lot of test drive fitting to see what has to happen and working out what I have to pull apart to gain access to. I've done this screw up a little bit too tight, I think. Till I get my second screw in. Now when you're putting the servo horns together, you're better off using a servo tester, setting it to 1500 microsecond, or the 90-degree, the center position, and mount these so that they are straight out. Now I've already done that with these 2, but for this one over on the other side, I've got to remount that horn. Now these plastic knobs here are for these to go on, and I'm trying to remember which way round this one goes. I think this one goes on this side, and they will connect into a hinge arrangement that looks like this. This is not one of the better prints, but it still looks, it's okay, and it's mostly hidden. It pushes through there, and then you can put a screw or a pin in through there. Now what I found is if I drill that to be 2.4mm, and I have a set of drills that are just a thumb drill or a hand drill setup, and these are in 0.1mm steps. And that comes in both left and right handed drilling, and there's a nice 2.4mm in there. So I run my 2.4mm drill down through both these parts, and then I get some line trimmer line that's 2.4mm. This is the nylon, and it's reasonably slippery, so it works well for these hinges. You then push that in, make sure it goes all the way, and you've got your hinge pin. Let me just get these screws out of here before I lose some more. Okay, so these are all, we'll come back to these, but just so you know, these are an M3 flathead or countersunk, and they are 10mm long, and I'm using those to screw in these hinges. So they get screwed in at the front, and what I did was I tapped out the holes in the plastic to M3. I could have used something like one of these screws. These are a 4G by 12, but I found these work quite well. So just going to turn this round for a minute. I just lost one of my rods. Until I get the top ring on and the screws on, these rods can fall out, and I might just leave them out for the moment because I've had a second one just fall out. Now if I grab these, I'm just going to tilt this back a bit. And try and show this hinge down here. And that's the one I've just reassembled. You'll see there's a hole there. We can poke that through the hole. It is a tight fit, but it does go in there. Remember, this is TPU, so it is flexible. Okay. Poke that in. And of course I left my screwdriver out of reach. This just slots into this spot here. Now there is a sloped side to these. The sloped side goes to the top. Okay, so the idea with that hinge, that attaches with a couple of screws through onto the actual door, and as the servo pushes and pulls, it opens and closes the door. There is a second one, more rigid, located in the upper panel, and that also needs to be fitted when I put it on that top ring. But before we get that far, let's get this one on. So one of the things I found is these little knobs that stick up from the servos allows a little hole in the top here. This is flexible, and it just pushes over and locks into place. And I could have used this one. This would have been a good example. I'll put that one in a minute. But unfortunately, those knobs are also easy to break off. And I actually found those 10mm long M3 flathead screws also work. And you can actually poke this on and it will pivot quite happily there. Now I have got somewhere a servo tester and a battery to power it. Now my servo tester does have a button that lets me select 1500 microseconds as a set position. So I'm aiming for 90-degree output here. And I've got a screwdriver here somewhere. Okay, that's in. Now, if we look at, if I can turn that round the right way, I'll set this into sweep. And you can see that flap opening and closing. And that's our bottom hinge. Now the top hinge doesn't have a servo on it, it just runs freely, so that's easy to do. But you can see how that one works now. Now that I've got that side in, I can, and that's screwed down, I can put the ring 4 on and then put the hub, the leg hub in. So on this one, I've still got to put screws in for the bottom hinge here. So, sorry, you can't see that. Let me see if I can adjust this camera a bit. So this one here is for our data port. Again, same setup. I've used the nylon line trimmer line as our hinge pin. It actually works well because it's slippery, being nylon. We put that into place and we screw it up as well. Again, I did make sure I used the proper M3 drill tap, or drill and then tap to suit. I can't remember what size that drill bit is. It's come part of my set. A little bit bigger than 2.5, I think 2.6mm drill. And then tapping into plastic is actually very easy. Once you get that into place, we can then clip it onto here. Now I've previously attached this using the servo tester. And that works quite well. And this one is for the other bread pan over over here. Can't see the outside of it. I'll just poke this through. And they're all the same, these hinges. Okay, so on the front, up here, we do have a charge port, I believe they call it. And there's a cover that goes on there. Now this again, this one has a different hinge setup. And again, I've used the nylon line trimmer line as the hinge pin that goes all the way through down to the bottom here. This could use a bit of sanding, so I will have to sand that and paint it. And that, if I turn it around far enough, slips into the slot here. It is easy to identify because it's the longest hinge of the lot. And that gets held in with 2 screws. Now, they recommend, or in the original design, there's a 3mm magnet gets epoxied into down the bottom here, like on the shadow, and another one, 5mm magnet gets glued, epoxied into there, so that when this closes, it latches. Now, I did find somewhere on one of the modifications that are available, some parts that you can print to allow you to add a servo in here. So I'm going to look at that one. I'll probably print that out, and I think it uses a 9G servo. So I may end up pulling this apart so I can put a 9G servo in there. And that will make this port servo controlled as well, and I won't need to worry about getting in 2 more magnets. But it looks pretty cool. Okay, so I can't really put these ones back. Oh, I can put that hinge in. So that hinge goes in there. This is for the data port. So I can put the data port on. I have got a data port door that I've printed out. Do you think I can find where I put it? Found it. I haven't processed it or painted this one yet. It has got layer lines, some pretty bad layer lines, which I will have to sand out. But on the back, I've got these M3 by 6mm screws, I think they are. They're very small. Unfortunately, they're also stainless steel, which means they don't stick to my screwdriver. And we can mount this. I've got it currently upside down in my hands. Again, I tapped or drilled and tapped this with my metal tapping set. So we're just going to start with the one screw in the top. Hopefully I won't block the view too much. Now there is another version of these TPU parts that I printed for the hinge, where it uses a PLA printed solid hinge like this, but it has a slot in it for the TPU to slot into it. But I never got those to work well enough, which is why I printed the longer ones where it forms the whole hinge assembly. The only thing I would suggest with it is if you've got a printer that does multi-material, maybe set it up to use multi-material, you know, the bulk of it being PLA or PETG, and then the rest of it being the TPU. Although I don't know many printers that can actually do different types of materials like that. So in theory, when I operate this, the door closes. And if I power up my servo tester, and we can open and close the data port, which is cool. Now the data port has this piece which slots in here. It is fun to try and get it in after you've got your hinges on. It's also fun to try and get the hinges on once it's in. A chicken and the egg issue. When the top piece is on, the fourth ring is on, that holds this piece, which taps the top. And so now our servo can open and close the data port. Alright, I'll fit that back in when I reassemble the top section. In the fourth ring, there are two servos for the arms that swing out, utility arms I think they call them. There's also, in the next section up, mounts for devices that go in each side of the bread pan. One was a data arm, and the other one was like a gripper. And they each have two servos, one to swing it up and one to actually cause it to push out, rotating the case of one, and operate the gripper in the case of the second one. So we need to start thinking about some of our wiring for all of this, because we're going to need wires. We need 3 wires for this servo. We can run a loom around and pick up different parts. So the 2 servos up the top here, I've actually got extensions on the wires already, so I might run them down fairly low or around here. In around this area, I have got a speaker with an amplifier and an MP3 player built on. In fact, here it is. And that little MP3 player can be controlled by an Arduino or something of the like to actually trigger it to play specific sounds recorded on the micro SD card. So we need to get the control and power wires for that back as well. So we've also got lights potentially being mounted on the back of this, and it will need to be controlled. And in the back of the charge panel, up here, there's also provision for lights in there as well. So we need to start thinking about all of the servos, and there are quite a few of them. Was it 1, 2, 3, potentially a fourth one there, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. We got 10 servos already. Plus we've got the sound system. We've got 2 sets of indicator LEDs that we need to be able to control. So I'm already thinking about how I'm going to wire all of this up, and I'll probably run a loom around. Up the top here, there's also a motor mount to turn the Lazy Susan or turn the dome, and there'll be a connection through a slip ring to that dome, and that slip ring currently has 12 wires in it. So I need to be able to figure out how I'm going to connect all of that together and bring it back onto our control board, which will be mounted in the back area somewhere. Alright, see when I get to all of that, don't forget to click on like, subscribe, and ring that notification bell. It's a form of support that helps the channel a great deal and costs you absolutely nothing. If you'd like to support the channel further, I do have a Patreon account and YouTube membership, and you can join my VIP patrons GoLucky, Coburnicus, and Jeff Jerde. My All Access Patron used to be Jeff Jerde, but he upgraded. And my Builder Patrons, Elmerels45, Andrew Cardone, Airgar69, and James Kelly. And my YouTube member, Magdy Salib, in helping to support the channel. All my YouTube members and patrons get these videos a week early before they're released publicly. My VIP patrons can gain access to these videos as I produce them. If you've got any questions, feel free to leave a comment below or drop into the Discord. I have photos of this build all the way through and dates when these videos will be released in the Astromech section. Or if you have any questions on any of the other topics I've covered, feel free to ask in there as well. And we'll see you in the next video.